All right, guys, we are live. We are live. I did not sleep last night. Those of you who are close to me know that I am a very big fan of politics. I have watched numerous elections this year, and yesterday was my country's time. And I've watched the French elections, you know, the German, the Euro, um, the Indian elections. I'm planning to watch the US elections, and obviously my country's election is coming up, so I had to watch them, right? And my God, I didn't even change my title. Whoopsie, let's do that real quick. Day 46 and day 12 on the beach. There we go. It has been a great night. I was hoping the Greens would do slightly better. I was hoping for like 3 to 6 seats. We got 4, so we're kind of about where I was expecting to be, but I was really hoping for 6. I'm not gonna lie. For those of you who don't know, I'm a Green Party voter. But yeah, the most Green Party MPs we've ever had before is 1. So it's a 400% increase technically, or 300% increase technically. Sorry, I'm just looking for something new to watch. About it. Steph, welcome, welcome. How are you doing? How's things? How's life? Tell me all about it. I am very tired, but I'm in a very good mood. I stayed up all night watching the election coverage, and my God, am I glad I did. My God, am I glad I did, because fuck me, that was a good election. uh, so yeah, I'm in a very good mood today. I'm not gonna lie. I it's better than I could even imagine, like, yeah. Mrs. Biffle Chips, welcome, welcome. How you doing? How's things? How's life? Tell me all about it. Is this my main? No. Yeah. Okay, I'm doing it. How are you doing today, Mrs. Biffle Chips? You're doing okay. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. And the band that I like released a new song a couple weeks ago, so you've been binging that. Oh, I love that. I love that. It's like, oh my god, new song. I've got to say though, these long nights, I might have to stop doing them soon, guys. My pain is so bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I very, very much appreciate it. Like, I honestly, that was the most fun watching the election I've had in a very long time. And not just because Labour won, and not just because Labour won by so much, but just, you know, like, the coverage was really good this time. It was quite funny. Mr. Biscuits, he had all like 3D shit, like virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D maps, and all sorts. And it was just that technology existed for a while, but I've never seen anybody use it for election coverage before in the way they've done it. Like when I watched my first election, I was like 10 years old, something. I've had an interest in politics for a long time, and they were literally velcroing hexagons to a giant map on the floor, right? That's and then to go from that to having these 3D rendered, like, interactive maps, and it was just really nice to see. And like that technology's existed for a while, and I have always wondered why we don't see it more in normal broadcast. Like it's used heavily by the movie industry, and it's used, funnily enough, heavily by the YouTube creator industry. It's not an expensive technology, at least not these days. But be able to like map augmented reality in 3D space, well, so it's like 3D green screen, but there's no green screen, right? And it's very interesting how it works. I'm not going to go into it because I could talk about it for about an hour. But it's just basically they've got hundreds of tracking points all across the room. It's not a green screen, it's just a normal room. They've got hundreds or sometimes even thousands of tracking points. The guy, um, he's the way a BBC's done it, I watched they talked about it a little bit. In the guy's suit has running down it lines of UV thread, not UV, infrared thread. So when they shine infrared at it, they can see the shape of the guy digitally because of the thread that's worn into a specially made suit. So that's how they superimpose so they know where he is in the depth of field from the camera. So there were some things behind him and there were some things in front of him. And I was really like, how did they do that without like multiple camera angles doing it and a green screen? Because that's how it's usually done, even in 3D space. And it's because they were tracking his whole body with AI by using this special. Yeah, essentially motion capture suit, but you couldn't see it. That was the thing that blew my mind. So they was doing full body motion capture, but they weren't wearing like sticky things all over him that were obviously seen. You know, it was weaved into the very fabric of his suit, which I think's really cool. I imagine that 3-piece suit that he was wearing was very expensive. You know, I do not want to know how much. And it was really funny because there was only ever one guy with the AI stuff the whole time, and I think it's just because the suits are that expensive. I cannot think of another reason why you wouldn't have multiple people interacting with that. The only thing I can think of is just suits are really expensive. Because, like, why would you not have two people pointing out different things and stuff otherwise? You know, but like, I'll try and find like a screen grab or something for you later, maybe Biffle Chip, so you can see what I mean. But it was just really impressive. And then usually I swap between Sky News and BBC because they have opposite biases. You know, Sky News is typically biased towards the opposition, and BBC is unfortunately typically biased towards the current in party, current in people, which make yeah they say they're non-biased, but the government pays their wage, you know. So like there's some the BBC was surprisingly unbiased for once, which I mean there was a big scandal a couple of years ago about BBC bias and issues and things. So they started doing things like BBC Verify, where they had third-party people verifying news stories, and they did BBC Have Your Say, where anybody can send them a message on WhatsApp saying, "Can you explain more about this?" or "I think this is wrong. Can you prove it?" And they would have a show every night. It was like 45 minutes every night where they'd go through these. Obviously, they would tailor pick ones because I bet they got a lot of crap, right? Because anybody can WhatsApp them. But they tailor picked, the ones that they got most frequently, and they would go through the data of it. Like it was like hosted by a statistics professor. It was really, and I just like the BBC has gone above and beyond to break past the idea that they're biased, which is very important for the whole point of the BBC is to be unbiased, right? Like we pay a TV license, so there is no advertisement. There is technically no funding from central government, even though central government does own it. That's why we pay a TV license is to have completely unbiased media. And we unfortunately weren't getting it, which is one of the reasons why so many people pissed off over TV licenses of late. I think on you know I think on the whole, having a same with CBC, the TV channel just have ads to radio station. Don't know. Yeah. Well, that's the point. Their idea is the second you take money off a company, it is even if you're not intentionally biased, just knowing that, let's say Mondelez sponsored you, and Mondelez has some kind of thing. The natural human subconscious, like these guys pay our wage, like we can't go to it for. So having that completely and utterly detached from that form of funding, BBC has been trialing all the forms of funding though. So like alongside Channel 4, which is also owned by the British government but has ads and runs as a for-profit service, and ITV, which is like the second channel in Britain. They together have bunched all their original shows into a streaming service called BritBox, and they advertise it across the world, and then that money shared between those people, and that's kind of them trying to fund the BBC, because they want to get rid of TV licenses within the next decade. Actually, because so many people just don't have a TV anymore, or at least don't have a traditional TV anymore. So But yeah, so all in all, I don't know how else you can properly fund it. I do think opening up BBC, because like you can't watch BBC if you're not in Britain. Kind of. I mean, you kind of can, you kind of can't. It's complicated. Um, but I think having a subscription model for BBC outside of Britain would be very interesting. Um, just a cheap, the same price as a TV license, essentially. The TV license is very cheap. It's like £6 a month or something. It's less than Netflix. And then you don't only get BBC news and political stuff, which needs to be unbiased, obviously, but you also get coverage of the arts. Like we've got a whole channel dedicated to the arts run by the BBC, BBC Four, and it's all like the proms, classical music, like traditional like theatre shows and things. There's a what I've been up to today. Steph, I literally from so I played RuneScape until 10 p.m. last night, and then from 10 p.m. until about an hour and a half ago, I was completely 100% dedicated to watching coverage from the general election. All the seats have been declared bar two, but we're not expecting those two until tomorrow now because they got recounts and the constituencies they're like all country roads and stuff. Um, so I have been watching election coverage all night, and now I'm doing this. So I've not really been up to much today. How about you? What have you been up to? Also, I want to complain real quick. So I've been trialing the different settings on my tens machine. And I found this massage program number two. Great name, right? Um, and it's actually really good, but it's only 25 minutes and I can't make it longer. So every 25 minutes, I have to restart my ten machine. It's very frustrating. Well, the program I've been using before was 120 minutes, so I got 2 hours before I had to do anything. Much better. What about you, Steph? What have you been up to today? Anything fun, interesting, noteworthy? And how are you missing pickle chips? You went out this morning, you've just been doing jobs this afternoon. Nice, nice. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Oh, Mrs. Pickle Chips, I had a really funny conversation with another friend of mine who's into politics. And there's, so our now Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has been described by lots of people as very Marmite. You either love her or you hate her. I personally hate her. I find her really annoying. I find the way she talks is like not common. She has a common accent, but that's not the issue with her. It's like she's always talking down to people, and it's like she's always being defensive, and I just don't like it. It's not got that confidence I like to see in a politician. Um, but the friend I was talking to was saying, "Well, I really like her. I don't see how she can be very Marmite." And I'm like, "That's like proving the description, right?" I really don't like her, and you really like her, and there you go. But yeah, I don't like I don't like her accent. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Mancunian accent anyway, so it's not like I'm purposely picking it on her. I just like her part of Manchester is just a very I don't know how to explain it. It's a very, you know, like working class accent. And I know that Labour is the working class party and you're going to get people with accents like that. But after having 14 years of Tories talking, and like most Tories have had elocution lessons, so they know how to talk and they know how to talk properly. And I think going from that to hearing Angela Rain is just a bit. On the one hand, I know I should be proud because I'm a Northerner and she's a Northerner, whatever. But I just think there are people who can talk better, and there are people who can better unite. Um, a bit of a surprise, yeah. Not even just a bit. Like I said, her accent isn't really the problem, right? It's like Sturmer doesn't have the most posh accent, although he's a bit posh because he's a lawyer, you know. Um, Sturmer's a bit wishy-washy, but it's like she's always defensive. It's just not what I'm used to. Partially, it's not what I'm used to, and it's like I got used to the likes of the overconfidence of Liz Truss and Theresa May, you know, and Priti Patel as like female MPs, and they were all terrible people and terrible politicians, but they had this confidence about them, you know. And then when you listen to Angela Rayner talk, I just don't get that. She just doesn't seem very confident about like it's like watching somebody with imposter syndrome. I don't know if she's struggling with imposter syndrome, you know, but you know when somebody got imposter syndrome and they're talking a little bit slow and quiet and they're just not really being very direct about anything, and I think that that's an important thing to consider, you know. But at the end, it's not our fault that the Tories have ruined faith in politics, and it's not our fault that Tories have ruined the economy. You know, it's always this super defensive, and it's just not very. Like, I want somebody who doesn't come out and say the other party is bad. I want somebody to come out and say we are good for this reason. You know, it's very American politics. That's why I don't like it. You know, have you ever watched an American debate apart from the most recent one because that was a shit show? But like they just spend all the time going that guy's shit, and then the other guy goes no that guy's shit, and then they argue over everything that the other person has done wrong, and they're just not saying anything about themselves, just attacking in a defensive manner, and that's what she's like, and I just don't like to see that in British politics. Well, Sturmer, on the other hand, yeah, I hate that in politics. Exactly. Sturmer, on the other hand, is like, this is what we've changed. This is our new policy. This is what we believe. This is what we're doing. You know? Like, we all know Tories have done a shit job. Like, we are all living in this country. We are all aware that unless you are the top 3% of earners, the Tories, you're worse off because of the Tories, right? We don't need to be reminded that in an election campaign. What we need to be reminded is what the fuck are you going to do about it? You know? And that's Sturmer is a lawyer, right? So Sturmer went to law school, he was a practicing lawyer, he was a public defender, a very good public defender. We don't call them public defenders, but and then he led the Crown Prosecution Service. So he was like the equivalent to an attorney general kind of thing, lead prosecutor, whatever you want to call them. Um, so Sturmer talks like a lawyer, and there's just no way he's not going to talk like a lawyer. But the thing that I do like about Sturmer is not inspiring, but at least he like his first and foremost thing is to say this is what we've changed from like the last because like Labour last election suffered the biggest defeat in a very long time, and to go from that to this ridiculous majority is because of Stern. Because he's not afraid to go. You know what? The Labour Party weren't doing a very good job before. This is what I've changed. This is what we're doing different. This is the plan from day one. You know, and like, have you ever heard Sturm speak? Have you ever listened to him in a speech or anything? This is a bit of a change. I'm presuming not because it's British politics and overseas people don't tend to watch. But like Sturm is very you've not heard he's very monotone and he's very I call him uninspiring. That's the term I like to use. He's very monotone, he's very monotone, he's very dare I say boring, you know? But if you are willing to get past that, he is at least saying, we've changed, we're doing this differently, this is what we're going to do. Like he's just completely out there. He's just confidently saying, I believe we can win on our own merits without attacking the other side. And that changed like in the early parts of the election, it was attacking and being defensive. Um and that went over really bad with the electorate. So he decided to be more like a lawyer, funnily enough, like, rather than less like what he thinks a politician should be. And he, did very well once he did that. So like uninspiring, yes, but he gets to the point. Where Angela Rayner is just. I've listened to Angela Rayner in 3 debates, and I still don't know what she believes. Right? I know what the Labour policy is, and I know what the Tories have done wrong, but I don't know what she believes. I don't know what she thinks, and that's my issue with her. Moving on from politics now, because I'm not doing a politics podcast, guys. Okay, the one that's just one of me in a monologue is not a pod. Is a monologue a podcast? I don't think so. We're not doing a politics podcast. We're in the hall. We're having a good time. Labour won. It can be, I think. I have no idea. I don't know. I've never looked up what is the definition of a podcast, It's not something I ever thought I'd need to know. Because when any podcast I've watched is like at least 2 people. But the last thing I will say about the election before we move on is my takeaway from it is not that Labour won, it's that the Tories lost. Right? Labour's vote share flatlined. Right? Labour's vote share, in fact, is worse. So last election, when Labour suffered one of the worst defeats in modern memory, Labour got 40% of the vote. This election, when Labour got what people are saying the best Labour showing since 1997, Labour only got 35% of the vote share. But because Reform absolutely fucked over the Tories, Labour managed to squeak by. But it's a very soft majority. It's a big majority, but it's very soft and it's very fragile. Fall of Civilization was the one person podcast that is too. Okay then, so podcast can be one people. But yeah, moving on. I'm going to the pub later, guys. Swiftly moving on because I don't want to just be stuck talking about politics this whole time. I'm going to the pub later. I'm looking forward to it. This pub sells ramen and it's pretty good, so that's what I'm probably going to eat. No idea what I'm going to drink yet. Obviously not alcohol, but like they have a massive selection of various things. I need to do some shopping today, which I'm like in my head I'm going boo, because I hate shopping. But thanks, I'm going to go back to politics. Thanks to the Tories, they can now charge more online for the same product than if you was paying for it in store. So it's literally cheaper to go to the supermarket. Oh, nice, nice. It's really funny because when you're searching through it on the website of the app, you'll see in the picture it's like 99p and then it's like 1.9. And that doesn't sound like a big increase. Um, but 99p to 1.9 is, 10%, roughly. It's basically 10%. Yeah. And if everything's 10% more expensive, well, that's a bad time to inflation. What pub are you off to? Steph, I can't answer that and not give away where I live. You know? I'm trying to think, is there a way I can answer this without. I can say I'm going to Weatherspoons because there are lots of Weatherspoons in Britain, but there are multiple Weatherspoons in our town, so that's not super helpful for you to know where. But I'm going to a Weatherspoons. There are like 400 of them in Britain, so I don't think that's giving away my location. Yes, I will be in one of 413 locations later this evening, somewhere in the UK. You don't need to be sorry, it's fine. I'm very good at being smart about how I answer questions. It's just something you learn, or as Mr. Chips calls it, that's a very stream friendly way of saying something. Also, I'm not going to go into the specifics of it exactly because I don't know what the reporting required limitations are on this case. Um, but a guy who did, how do I word this stream friendly? A guy who imposed himself due to his own physical needs on another human being. I'm sure you know what I mean. Um, got sentenced to 7 years where I live this week. So that's pretty nice. An actual decent sentence for once. Yawning. Great. What time are you off out with your parents? Yeah, your parents. I was like, is it parents? Your parents in law? My brain just pulled a blank. What time or in how long are you meeting up? I should say, because I time zones are confusing. Okay, in about 6 hours. That's not too bad. Oh, are you? What day is it? Are you working? It's Friday, right? I'm presuming you're working. Yeah, you're working. You'll be seeing them and your granny after work. You'll be having pizza. Pizza is always a good show. You know, I had pizza last night. Not gonna lie, pizza's pretty great. I can turn off my webcam a sec because I'm wearing 2 layers at the top now, but now it's warmed up. I'm feeling pretty warm. So I'm just going to take off my Under Armour layer and go. Also, not talking about British politics directly here, but so in the UK we have what we call parody politics, which is a very British thing, right? So you get people dressed up as an intergalactic space warrior with a bin as a helmet, Count Binface as he likes to be called. Um, in the constituency, we have the Zoc. We have Screaming Lord Roche, or whatever his name is. Like, we have all of these just absolute bullshitters who pay money to be part of the election. Because you've got to pay £1,000, and then if you get over a certain percentage of the vote, you get that money back. But none of these people do. So they're paying £1,000 every time. Lord Buckethead, yeah. So Binface wanted to be the new Lord Buckethead, but Buckethead said no. So he created his own persona called Binface, basically. And his party is called The Bin. That is Binface's official party registration, The Bin. Which is hilarious. So I'm not talking about serious politics now. Son of Alf, welcome. So we are talking about politics, I'm not going to lie. We have just had an election here in the UK, so naturally it can come up. But now we're talking about parody politics. We have I don't know why, so it used to just be called the Monster Raving Loony Party, right? Between last election and this election, it's been changed to the official Monster Raving Loony Party. The colours are yellow and black, and they like to wear very big hats, right? One guy was wearing a hat that was 3 feet tall. 3 feet tall hat, just because, yeah. So we had like over 100 parody entrances this year, which was great. I love seeing them. And the best part is they're not dicks about it. Like, they could very easily be like really bad trolls or whatever, but it's just funny. You have a friend who lives in the UK. You got a friend in me. You'll have to forgive me. I have had 6 energy drinks and not slept. You know, we have an election roughly every 3 to 5 years in the UK. I like to watch the whole thing. Although I do also watch other elections as well that I like. But yeah, so there's a lot of fun to be had. Oh, Mrs. Hopefully by this time next year I'll be visiting the UK for a month. Nice, that'd be great. Mrs. Bifflechips, did you know that Count Binface managed to enact one of his policies in London without even getting elected? So one of his manifesto promises was a £1.10 price cap on croissants sold in London. And all the main shops and supermarkets and everything all set the prices to £1.10 just to be part of the action. So he managed to enact his £1.10 price cap for croissants without even being elected. Now, is that not like Binface for PM, you know? You haven't been anywhere outside the US. I haven't been anywhere outside Britain. You know? So I completely understand. I would never visit the US. No offense on the Valve, right? But you guys have got way too many guns, way too many crazy people with guns, and not enough healthcare for my liking. Well, actually, no, you have a lot of healthcare, it's just very expensive. Don't get me wrong, US healthcare is very good. And I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to say US healthcare is bad, because US healthcare is arguably one of the best healthcare systems on the planet, as long as you're not taking into consideration the need to pay it. I don't know what you mean by the UK has it made. Or else it's stupid hay fever. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Yeah, free healthcare. Mostly free healthcare. Because like if you work you have to pay £9.90 for a prescription. But like £9.90 versus how much it would cost in the US, you know? So like you, honestly, UK healthcare is above average, and we are the cheapest healthcare system on the face of the planet per bed. The US spends 7 times more per patient than the UK does on healthcare. Right? So that to me is insane. Right? Yes, US have the best healthcare on the planet, arguably. I'm saying arguably because New Zealand's healthcare is meant to be very good. Australia's healthcare is meant to be above average. You know, UK healthcare is above average. We have long waiting lists at the moment, but that's mostly due to 14 years of corruption than it is to do with the healthcare system being inherently broken. Um, but yeah, you know, yes, it's going down the rabbit hole. I listen, right? This year, so far, I have watched the French election, the German election, the Euro elections, the Indian elections, and the British elections, and I cannot wait for the US elections because, you know, like, so British election for me is the semi-serious because I live in Britain, but also quite fun election. Like elections in Britain are just very fun, right? We're not super serious about it a lot of the time. Like obviously the candidates are serious; they have to be. But I mean, like we have all the side people and all the protest people and whatnot. It's funny, it's great. We have massive protests. It's all fun. There's nobody being shot. It's great. Um, French elections, and German elections. The German elections not too bad. The French election is terrifying, although I think we're still waiting for second phase voting. Euro elections, kind of scary, but not terrifying just yet. Like, far right is taking over in a lot of places in the world. So to see the UK bucking that trend and getting a what is arguably now a centrist party rather than a left party, but still not far right. In your opinion, you have way too many problems in the US. I am not going to comment. We have many problems in the UK. You know, I'm not going to pretend that UK is. I don't like to make fun of other countries. I don't think, other than you doing it like as banter. Banter's okay. Being serious, like, I would not feel safe in America. You know, I can say that because it's a personal opinion. But I'm not going to say America is unsafe because I don't think it's up to me to make that decision or that observation, right? I wouldn't personally feel safe in America. Canada, on the other hand, Canada's kind of chill. Not gonna lie, if I were to visit North America, it would be Canada. Although with me getting somewhat okay at Spanish, maybe visiting like somewhere in South America could be interesting. No, right. Let me put this into let me put this into consideration for you, right? You have to bear in mind I'm very tight. Britain has 3 guns per 100 people. You know, Britain has 3 guns per 100 people in public hands. Lebanon, a country that has a literal private terrorist military, has 57 guns per 100 people. America has 120 guns per 100 people. So America has more than double the number of guns per person than Lebanon, and Lebanon has a fucking private army that is, completely fighting the government and also fighting Israel. Yeah, Hezbollah is kind of like it's not even just too many guns, right? Like Lebanon has too many guns. America, I just don't know what the fuck you're doing anymore. Like I can understand if the average person has a gun that you would also want a gun for the protection, right? Like people in Britain who are committing crimes. Welcome. People in Britain who are committing crimes carry knives because all the criminals carry knives. It's very rare to see anybody carrying a gun in the UK. Very rare. So criminals carry knives because the other guys also have knives. Makes sense. In America, the other guys have guns, so obviously you want a gun. But then why do you need so many of them? In a civilized society, like, you need one gun. I'm not going to say don't have guns. Like, if you personally want to own a firearm, I'm not going to say you shouldn't. No, you can get guns privately in the UK. My dad has a rifle. My dad's a farmer. He has it for a legitimate business purpose. There's a firing range about 3 miles from where I live, where you can register to own a firearm. This is the thing. What people don't understand is Britain, like before 1973, I think it was, Britain had about as many guns as America had, which blows people's mind when I tell them this, right? So 1973, Britain had our first mass shooting event, which was a school shooting. And collectively as a society, we as a community said, if we all give up our guns, unless we legitimately need them, and self-defense is not considered a legitimate use in the UK, if we all give up our guns, there won't be another mass shooting. And funnily enough, in the 50 years since that happened, we've not had another mass shooting. So pistols are illegal in the UK. So in the UK, you can own a shotgun, you can own a rifle, you can own a semi-automatic pistol that has a fixed stock, so it is considered a carbine. You can own a carbine. You can own flintlocks, black powder weapons, cannons. You can own a cannon if you want a cannon, but you can't have pistols. Pistols, no allowed. Technically, this is what's going to blow your mind. Automatic weapons are legal in the UK. Automatic weapons are not legal in America, but they are legal in the UK if you have a legitimate need. Now, it's very rare to have a legitimate need, and we have very few automatic weapons in the UK, even compared to other guns, right? We have very few automatic weapons in the UK, but there are a handful of people who have them for very specific usage. But it's very rare. right? But pistols completely against the law. And the reason why pistols are against the law is the same reasons they're against the law across Europe. In Japan, they're against the law. In Korea, they're against the law. And in a lot of places, they're against the law because you can conceal them. So weapons that are easily concealed are against the law. Because our weapons are not designed for self-defense, right? If somebody broke into your home and you shot them with your weapon, you are guilty of murder. They cannot be used for self-defense. It's not allowed. It can't happen. Doesn't matter. Somebody could be in your own home, and if you shoot them, you have broken the law. You will go to prison. And I think that is like the difference in concept here. We Britain when Britain never had this whole guns are for self defense thing anyway, because like criminals just didn't really use guns in the UK, so it wasn't a big thing. But then after the mass shooting that happened, um, it happened in Scotland. Uh, we as a society just said guns should not be used to shoot people in Britain. You know, you want to go and shoot a deer, fine. You want to go and shoot a turkey, fine. Want to shoot a rabbit, a squirrel, a bird, all that's fine. You know, you want to shoot a person, you're breaking the law. Doesn't matter the reason. It is, you know, there was a case a few years ago where a farmer shot through a door and hit somebody on the other side of the door that he didn't know was there, and he got charged with murder. Because, and the reason he got charged with murder kind of complicated. Basically, he didn't know they was there, but he had a feeling that there was somebody inside his house, so he shot through the door. His intention was to scare them off, but because he fired it in a manner that was deemed to be dangerous to human health, it was considered an act of aggression. And that's the way we deal with guns in the UK. Is you can own a gun, you can own it for sport, you can own it for work, you can own it just because you think guns are cool, right? But you have to pass a mental health check, you have to pass a proficiency check, you have to keep your gun locked in a safe that the police can access at any time, you have to keep your ammo locked in a different safe that the police can access at any time. If you are traveling with them, you have to keep it unloaded. You can't even have a magazine in the weapon. You can't have bullets in the magazine. They have to be stored separately in locked boxes with separate keys in your vehicle. You know, the laws are very strict and very precise. And what does that mean? We have very few gun crimes in the UK. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's amazing. There are a good number of murders in the UK, usually involving knives. I'm not saying like Britain is this utopia of like non-aggression, but like the thing is, if you've got a knife, the chances of you going to the top of a tall building and managing to harm 100 people is zero, right? You can go into a crowd and start attacking people, but eventually, like the police are gonna come, or usually in the UK, like a bunch of people in the crowd just jump on you because they're like, "Yeah, we don't want this on our fucking streets." Uh, or as happened in London during the last major knife attack in my country, a guy with a narwhal tusk used it to stab the guy with a knife. Because that's the thing that happened. I don't know where I don't know where the narwhal tusk tooth, whatever the big pointed narwhal thing is called. I don't know where that came from. A tusk, okay. I don't know if it's a tusk or a tooth, or whatever. You know what I mean, though. The big long pointed spit thing. I don't know where that came from. The guy was on day release from prison, and he got his. Yeah, I know, right? The guy was on day release from prison. For some reason, had a narwhal tusk. He used that to subdue the one of the men with knives who were attacking people, and he actually got his prison sentence commuted because of that, because of an act of bravery, which is pretty. pretty interesting. But there's like videos of this guy just like swinging this narwhal tusk around, and I'm like, where do you like? I just don't know where he got it from, right? But yeah, so like mass attacks in the UK are very rare. They're always caused by non-domestic terror, and thanks to and I hate to say this, but thanks to mass surveillance done on behalf of the UK by GCHQ and the CIA. No, I know the teeth. I just didn't know if they were called tusks or teeth. I didn't know the name. I knew what they were. Um, but yeah. Anyway, so like because we now have mass surveillance and we work with the CIA and NSA to do mass surveillance, we have a lot less terror offences in the UK, which is pretty nice. Although I was watching Fox News because they were doing a bit on Britain. They were talking about it was because Farage was planning to go to the US to help Donald Trump win that election before he stood for election in the UK, and then he changed his mind. But they were talking about the UK and they were acting like it's a bloodbath on the streets and there are people just running around stabbing each other constantly. And I'm like, knife attacks happen. I'm not going to lie to you and say they don't, but they are not common, you know? Like, we are a country of 73 million people, and I know a handful of them this year. And a handful is too many, right? Don't get me wrong, a handful is too many, but there are. So I don't know if you do this in Canada or the US, but in the UK, there are bins in the. All the time, and we've now just even. I know, right? There are bins in police stations where you can go and drop off a bladed item, no questions asked. Right? So let's say you bought a knife for protection, but you don't want to be involved in that anymore. You can just go and drop it off, drop it in the bin. There's no cameras, nobody can see you. You just drop the knife in there and go on your business. It's a big locked cabinet, you can't get them out, don't worry. Um, so like this knife amnesties across the country have been massively popular. We've even got a giant angel made out of knives. Uh, where is one? Let me find out where that is. Angel made from knives. So I don't know. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I will post this link in chat. Not something that I usually do. Usually I DM it, but look at this. Is that a broken link? No, it works. It works. It just looked broken to me. Look at this. This is pretty cool. But yeah, so we took all those seized and surrendered knives and turned them into artwork. Because of course we did. There is a. I do notice there is a severe lack of narwhal tusk on this statue, though. You know, there's a severe like a no Walters. Yeah, but the angel could like hold it. It happen. But yeah, knife crime is an issue. More, there are particular parts of the UK where it's an issue, which I imagine is the same for other countries with violent crime. Is there are certain cities and certain regions that have significantly higher rates of violent crime than others. You know, I imagine that's a common thing in all countries. I don't think it's unique to the UK. But like London, for instance, is you know has high knife crime. Where I live, it's like nothing. You know, like we had one knife attack nearby where I lived last year, and it was devastating to us because it's just not a thing that really happens here, you know. And it was just like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened. Where when it happens in London, it's like, oh, another one. So it's like depends where you are, depends on how bad it is. But once again, I'm pretty sure that's the same as anywhere in the world. It's like we are very strict. So somebody in the UK bought a fidget toy that was like a miniature sword. No worries. Somebody in the UK bought a fidget toy that was like a miniature sword. What they didn't realize was the blade was sharp, right? They didn't realize this. The ad didn't realize this, and they got given 6 months in prison because the blade was technically 5.9 inches. The legal limit is 2.9 inches in the UK. A blade over that, completely against the law. Like he was just, he didn't even know that it came completely out of the sheath. It was sold as a fidget toy. And they sell it as a fidget toy so that teenagers can buy it, and the parents just see fidget toy on the box and they don't question it. We've had this issue for a while with things being called fidget toys that are certainly not fidget toys. This guy just thought it was a cool toy. He got given 6 months in prison because he was carrying it around in public. He got searched for whatever reason by the police. I don't know if they saw him fidgeting it. I don't know if he was being searched for another reason. I didn't look too deep into it. They got 6 months in prison because he was carrying a bladed article over 2.9 inches long. Um, it's not cut and dry. Like for instance, there are reasonable excuses. I don't know if that's the correct legal term, but there are reasonable considerations for why you may carry them. So, for instance, when my dad is working, he has to walk a quarter of a mile with all of his gear for farming, and that includes multiple large knives. Like he got a machete and a very sharp serrated knife, and he got police stopped him once, searched his bag, just because he when he was very young. He's just a young guy walking with a bag in the middle of nowhere. They're like, "What the fuck are you doing at 4 a.m.?" And they found these blades. He said, "Why have you got these blades?" He said, "I'm a farmer. I'm going to work. I've got Wellington boots on. I'm in the middle of a farmer's field." And they go, "Yeah, fair enough with them." It's like certain chefs, like contract chefs, often take their own knives because that's the knives they practiced on, like high end chefs. I'm not talking about just like somebody who works in McDonald's or whatever. I'm talking high end chefs here, right? And they'll take their own knives to work. That's a reasonable excuse to have a bladed article. But outside of work and specific things. So, like, if you're part of a survival guides group, you can carry one whilst participating in group events. Things like that. Reasonable reasons why you need a large knife. But apart from that, you get caught with them, you get hammered. We just don't. We just don't allow it. But there are certain knives that are just completely illegal. So like locking knives. So if it's a flip knife that locks, illegal. If it's a spring-loaded knife, illegal. If you can open it with one hand, illegal. If it's a balisong, is that called balisong? You know, the butterfly type knife, illegal. Any knife that you can take from being safe to being dangerous with one hand is illegal. Whether it's designed to do it or whether it's common to do a trick to do it. You know? Anything that can take a knife from being safe to not safe. So, like, a legal knife in the UK is one that takes two hands to open and doesn't lock up. You know? If it's less than 2.9 inches, that's even better. But if you got a reasonable excuse for having it, such as I'm in the middle of the woods with a scout troop, or I'm with the territorial army, which is a reservist army, or something like that, you know, fair enough. But like the vast majority of people who are caught carrying bladed items do not have a reasonable excuse, and they're not even doing it aggressively, right? It'll be like, for instance, if you have a knife in your pocket when you're at work, and then you go to the shop and you don't take it out of your pocket, you are breaking the law, right? It's not if you're not on your way to work or you're on your way home from work, and you have that in your pocket, even if you just finished work and you're nipping the shop on the way home, legally you have to drive home, leave the knife at home, then go to the shop. You know, the laws are very strict, which is why knife crime is not that popular outside of, you know, where it happens a lot, like London, Liverpool, mostly big cities, really. I do feel sorry for the guy who legitimately thought he was buying a fidget toy, but like, if you bought something that looks like a sword and you can pull it out of the sheath like a sword and it sharpens like a sword, would you not just reasonably go, this probably isn't a fidget toy? You know, like, would a reasonable, because that's that's the burden of proof in the UK. Would a reasonable adult believe that it was an offensive weapon? That's the way they work it out in court for sentencing. So if a reasonable adult wouldn't believe it's an offensive weapon, usually you'll get like a fine and a commuted sentence. If a reasonable adult would deem it to be a weapon, then that's when you'd probably get sent to prison. Right? And their argument is, as an adult, because this was a 37-year-old, so as an adult who is on average going through a reasonable, would any other reasonable adult see that and believe it's a weapon? And even if it was a fidget toy, if another adult, if a reasonable person would believe it's a weapon, it's still illegal to have in public. So like BB gun, so BB guns in the UK, they have orange tips on them, right? And that orange tip is to say this is not a real weapon. This is not lethal, or this is not capable of being lethal. Then you have things like air rifles, which are kind of legal, kind of not. It depends. It's complicated. They don't have orange tips on because theoretically they can be lethal. So they're not designed to be. Usually they're meant to be strict. But like, so there is a not lethal. Then there's less than lethal, which is it could maybe be lethal if used in just the right way. And then there are lethal weapons, and where you fall on that spectrum, you know, determines a lot about what happens. Guys, this is a really weird stream. I was not expecting the stream to go this way. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how we got to this conversation. Oh, yeah, I do. Guns in America, yeah. Anyway, I had Doritos. This one. You know, Doritos, pretty good. Also, by the way, guys, I'm so most of you know that I'm learning Spanish. in the UK, I'm just crinkling the bag. This word is Doritos, right? Doritos. That's the way we would pronounce it. But the company that makes this, which is actually Pepsi, but anyway, the company that makes this pronounces it the Spanish way because it's a Mexican word, so it's Doritos, not Doritos. There's no E on it, which changes the pronunciation in Spanish. And I'm just like, because I'm learning Spanish, I know that it's wrong, but I can't say it wrong because then nobody else will understand. Nobody else will understand what I'm saying, right? Because I'm saying it wrong to everybody else. So I'm like, you're going Doritos? And they're like, what the fuck's that? So instead, I have to get annoyed with myself that I'm saying the words wrong. It was funny because I was having a conversation with somebody in RuneScape last night in Spanish. And then I started talking English, and they're like, bro, are you American? I'm like, what? They're like, you must be from Florida. I didn't know Florida had a high amount of Spanish speakers. I don't know that much about the demographics of American states, I'm not going to lie. And I was like, no, I'm British. They're like, no, you're definitely from Florida. They're like, and I'm like, why? They're like, well, only Mexicans speak Spanish. And I'm like, bro, just read that sentence back to yourself. Only Mexicans speak Spanish. What's the name of the language that you just said? Right? It's like the stupid people who say, why do English people speak American? Should they not speak a European language? Which is an argument I have seen said on Reddit more times than I'd like to admit. You know, and it's that same kind of idea. It's just this American and all the other Central and South American countries that speak Spanish. Maybe this guy thinks that they're all just Mexico. Maybe he doesn't know that there are multiple countries in South America. I wouldn't put it past him. And not to mention the fact that there are countries in South America that speak Portuguese. You know, just to make it even more complicated. But regardless, apparently, only Mexicans speak Spanish. That was something somebody legitimately. And I asked them, I was like, bro, are you taking the piss? Like, listen, I'm British. We like banter as much as the next people. But please tell me this is banter. Please tell me it's a troll. Please tell me it's a joke. Just anything. It's like, no, I'm like, only Mexicans speak Spanish. And it's just like his brain could not comprehend that there was a land beyond the seas where Spanish originated. Like his brain could not accept that that was a reality. You know? To him, speaking Spanish meant you were Mexican. His brain could not comprehend that that language originated somewhere other than the Americas, which goes back to the joke of America thinks only America exists, right? So naturally, I said, you do know the Spanish speakers in Europe, right? And his response was, no, there isn't. And I'm like, you've got to be trolling in my head. I'm like, what do you think they speak in Spain? And his response was, I don't know, some European language. I'm like, yes, in Spain, they do speak a European language. It is called Spanish. You know? Exactly. And I didn't even get into. I just kind of like I was signing off at this point because had stuff to do. Um, but I personally just wanted to get out of that conversation as well. I'm just like I didn't get to the point where I was going to ask him what language do you speak, right? Because if Spanish is an American language, what about English? Is that also like is that an American language? And then if so, why am I speaking American if you think American is not a European language? You know, it's just this massive rabbit hole, and I'm just like this is why we should have IQ tests for people who vote. You know, like I've gone from being somebody who was like everybody should vote, it should be a legal requirement. I've gone from that to being into the mood of say, you know what, maybe we need some kind of proficiency test first. Maybe we need some kind of basic "are you an idiot" test before you're allowed to vote. I don't know how that would work, you know, but like I'm just saying, it's also hard for me. Um, how do I say this diplomatically? It's hard dealing with idiots for me, and and I've been quite blessed in life where I'm intelligent. My family are relatively intelligent, much like I'm relatively intelligent. And most of my friends have been relatively intelligent people, right? So I've very luckily not been exposed to idiots a massive amount in my life, and that means sometimes I forget idiots exist. You know, sometimes I just like because the baseline level of intelligence in the kind of circles I exist, which is like nerd circles, like I have hobbies that include statistics, and I talk to people whose hobbies also include statistics and technology and science. So, like, you know, maths and like cognitive reasoning skills is very high in my friend group. And I forget that there are people who are not always like that because I don't interact with many people. I have a very small friend group. Like on a day to day basis, I probably interact to the same like four people, and Mrs. Bagel Chips is one of them. I'm not sure if Mrs. Bagel Chips was BRB again, or if she's just not saying anything. But like, either way, I stand by what I said. Having word difficulties with trying to say something, so I've typed into it 3 times. I do that all the time. But yeah, like it. I think what surprises me isn't that there are idiots; it's that there are quote unquote normal people who are idiots, right? Because IQ and intelligence is a bell curve. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not a genius. I'm not like super ridiculously intelligent or anything like that. And I'm not going to try to lie to you and tell you that I am. I am average, maybe slightly above average intelligence. You know, I think a lot of what helps me is I've got a lot of curiosity, and I think curiosity is really important in just being able to understand things. Because if you're not curious, you've got no reason to learn how things work, in my opinion. So I think there are quite a lot of people who are maybe academically intelligent, and who has a high IQ, but her functionally less than ideal when it comes to like cognitive reasoning. And there's a lot more. I hate when everyone's like, you're either smart or you're not. I'm like, kind of, but no, right? Because there are really smart teenagers in the UK who are like acing all the tests and they're like top of the grades, whatever. Um, when when the spoon fed that information, but yet the last question's like, why are potatoes got dirt on, right? Like, so my dad, as a farmer, sometimes goes into schools, and teaches schools about farms and where food comes from, shit, good stuff, and like he was in a class of, I think he said they were 13 or 14-year-olds, and he had a big paper sack of potatoes, and kids were, looking at them and it's like, this is how potatoes are. And they're like, why did you put dirt on your potatoes? And my dad just didn't know how to respond to that question. And like for me, naturally, my brain just goes, well, we're not going to add dirt to something. So obviously they grow in or on dirt. That's where my, you know, reasoning skills come in. If something is dirty that we eat, that dirt is not put there intention, right? So that just, and part of the problem is like when I was a kid, you'd go to the supermarket and you buy 20 kilogram sacks of potatoes that still had dirt on them, you know? And you take, and my job as a kid was always to wash the potatoes before they were cut up and cooked. That was my job as a kid. That was my very first job in the kitchen. I was about 4 years old, and it's either because that's where the edible thing grows, or because it fell in the dirt. Exactly, right? So, like, from a young age, I knew potatoes had dirt on them because my job was to remove the dirt. And when I was very young, I probably asked, why is the dirt on these? Don't get me wrong, but we're talking about 13 and 14-year-olds, not 5 and 6-year-olds, right? So I started in the kitchen from a very young age, and I hated it when I was a kid. Which is really funny to say now because, as you know, Mr. Biffle Chips, I love cooking as an adult. And the reason I hated it as a kid was I was given one very simple, minute task, and I was just told to do that. You know, peel these carrots, wash these potatoes, and that was the limit. And I was like, I hate cooking. I hate all of this because I wasn't actually cooking. I was doing food prep. One I remember just trying to see. So here's the thing, right? I'm not gonna lie to you. If I'm cooking for myself, I don't bother washing the dirt off because there's so little dirt. I'm not gonna lie. If I'm cooking for somebody else, I will put in the effort to wash the dirt off. Don't get me wrong. You know, I'm willing to risk my own health. I'm not gonna risk somebody else's. But if I'm just cooking for myself, I'll just chop the bottoms of the mushrooms off and like rub off any major bits of dirt. But if there's a little bit stuck on it, whatever, I'll just leave it out. I grew up on dirt. You know, your hands would be covered in dirt and you'd be trying to eat a sandwich. You're gonna eat some dirt. It's just part of the job. But I do understand why other people would not want to do that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying what I do is a good idea. I'm just saying that's what I do. I, like, it depends on the amount of dirt, right? It completely depends on the amount of dirt. If there's a little tiny bit, and it depends on the mushroom as well. So, like, oyster mushrooms are grown with a high amount of sand. So you really want to wash out, like, you want to soak an oyster mushroom, and then you want to swill it about and drain it and soak it again. You want to get as much of that fine sand out that you want to. But like normal, um, Normal stuff are just grown on compost, right? So I don't care. Oh, Mrs. Pickle Chips. I think I came up with the best um first thing that Labour could do in government. I think I came up with like Labour's winning move. Are you ready for this? Yeah, I was told what to do off the mushrooms. And I was apparently too diligent because the mushrooms got soggy and I was told to do less of a job. Yeah, like so my idea is very simple. In the UK last year, raw sewage was discharged into waterways, including the sea, rivers, and lakes, 400,000 times in 1 year. In 1 year. So my idea is they go like we want to reach net zero, blah de blah de blah. We want to tackle it, so we are going to build a bunch of compost, a bunch of biodigesters, and we're going to put the raw sewage in the biodigesters, and then we're going to collect the methane off them, and we're going to use it to partially decarbonize the gas network whilst dealing with the raw sewage. You know, just say the government will pay for this, and the government will sell the gas at a fair price. It will be green gas. It will be completely, you know, carbon neutral, and by the time it's been through a biodigester, that waste is it can then be spread on farmers' fields, where human waste can't be otherwise. That would be what I would do. I'd be like net zero, tick. Decarbonizing gas, which is really difficult to do, tick. You know, dealing with raw sewage in our seasides and rivers, tick. It's just like a win-win. And also, we can then say we're becoming more energy independent, even though Britain is mostly energy independent anyway. But let's not get stuck in the weeds. You know, we can say we're becoming more energy independent. We're making our own gas. We don't even need to drill for it. Just we just got to put the shit in the round things, and you get gas. It's great. You know, that's what I would do. But I want your opinion on this. I want to know, am I crazy? That's what I would do. Deal with sewage, deal with decarbonizing gas grid, all great. Like, it's just, I find it really funny that they keep talking about let's do hydrogen and we can put hydrogen in the gas network. Do you know how terrible hydrogen is for the environment? Because most hydrogen is made from natural gas. And green hydrogen takes so much electricity that it's just ridiculously stupid to do it unless you already have an excess of renewables, which we don't. Whereas this, you build giant metal drums, you know, and then you put the waste in it. You add some enzymes to break down cellulose and such. You add some beneficial bacteria, collect the gas, and then you treat it the same way as you do the gas drilled out of a gas well. So you've got to clean out all of the contaminants, get pure methane, put it in the gas network. There you go, you got gas. Germany already does it. So we know it works. we know it works because Germany does it, right? That's the thing. It's not like I'm just coming up with some crazy pie in the sky idea. I'm not that clever, you know. I'm not gonna lie to you. I wish I could say to you, I've come up with an idea to make green biorenewable gas. I did not come up with this idea. It's used in Spain, it's used in Germany, and it's used in Australia and probably other countries as well. We actually have some farmers use it, and then they run a generator off the biogas and power their home and all of the farming equipment. No, but the point is, Labour are going to start a brand new energy company called GB Power, I think they're calling it, GB Energy. And the whole point of that is to be an investment vessel to invest in green energy. So they're going to put billions and billions of pounds into investment into green energy infrastructure. So like they've already said they're going to do that. They want to put it into solar panels and wind turbines, which I'm not against solar panels and wind turbines, right? Solar panels, I think, pretty great. Wind turbines, I think, pretty great. Um, but my solution deals with two problems. Well, three problems. So it deals with sewage being discharged into rivers, lakes, and the sea, which is not a very good thing. Um, so it deals with that. It deals with, like, Britain. Um, we are very reliant on gas in the UK, on methane, on natural gas. So we can decarbonize some of our natural gas network, which would, lead to an overall decrease of CO2 production. And on top of that, it's renewable. So we don't have to worry about getting everybody to get rid of their gas boilers as quickly. If across the UK we could produce 20% of our gas from biodigesters, which is like, just to be clear, that's like the level that it's the level that like Norway's doing. And Norway has a shit ton of natural gas. They just export a bunch. So like it's possible to do. And to me, if you're going to be investing in infrastructure anyway, like, why not? I'm not saying they should only do that. I do think we should build more wind turbines. I do think we should build more solar. But although I'm a Green Party voter and the official Green Party line is no to nuclear, I think we need to build more nuclear. I don't think nuclear is the permanent solution. I hope to God that we are not still using nuclear fission in 100 years or 200 years. But, like, right now, the best we can do in Britain is like 50, sometimes 60% renewables. And we have enough wind turbines to do more than that. But the problem is we can't stabilize the grid once we get beyond that 50, 60% wind, because wind just isn't reliable enough, right? So we're building giant battery farms and things, and that helps a little bit, and we're expecting that get us up to like 65, 70% renewables. But there's still that, 30% of power left. And then when we start all getting electric cars, our requirement of electricity is going to increase, whilst our requirement of energy overall will decrease, right? Because it takes more energy to move a petrol car the same distance as an electric car. It's just physics. It's more efficient. Um, so doing things where we can, offset our current things with biogas, great. But nuclear, you build a nuclear power plant, you've got energy, carbon, mostly free energy for, anywhere from like 40 to 70 years. And then my hope is by the time those reactors are being phased out, we've either cracked nuclear fusion by that point, which would be great, or we have just got to a point where the grid is so robust we can handle 100% renewable most of the time. So I vote Green Party. I don't agree with everything the Green Party says. And I think that's why voter turnout has been so low the last couple of elections. is because like people, instead of going picking the party that works best for them, you know, the trying to find the perfect party that they agree with 100%, and that's just not going to happen in my opinion. You know, I don't think you will ever find a party that you go, I agree with every single line of the manifesto, I agree with every single policy, I agree with every single person in this party. That's just not going to happen. You know, I don't agree. So there are only two things that I don't agree with the Green Party. Both of them involve nuclear. I believe that at least for the time being, we need a nuclear deterrent. The Trident system is our nuclear deterrent. As much as I hate how much it costs, I think we need it. At least for the next like 50 years. Hopefully, maybe after that, I don't know, Kumbaya or something. And I believe we need more nuclear energy. You know, them the only things I don't agree with the Green Party on. Everything else I agree with. So I vote Green. I think the issue with the Green Party is because they know they are not going to get elected. They can kind of be on the extreme far left, right? They can be like no nuclear weapons, because it doesn't matter. They can just say the big taglines, what sound eco-friendly, and not have to back it up, right? But if they ever want to get from being, you know, like 1 for 10 seats to even opposition, they're gonna have to be realistic about some things, in my opinion. You know, and I think getting to net zero is more important than not using nuclear right now. Because if we use nuclear, yes, we've got nuclear fuel to deal with for the next 1,000 years. That's a bad thing. I'm not going to argue that. Nuclear waste for the next, you know, 10 centuries is rough, but we can deal with it. We dig very very deep holes and bury the shit out of it, and then never go back there again. You know, but even though like that's only the really bad stuff. Most of it can be reprocessed and reused. Only like 3% of nuclear fuel is waste, technically, if you got reprocessing set up. So there's that, and I think getting to net zero carbon is more important now than having to deal with nuclear waste in 1,000 years. You know, like if we don't deal with net zero this century, lots of bad things are going to happen, most probably. According to most climate scientists, lots of bad things are going to happen if we don't deal with getting to net zero within the next few decades. Forget about this century, right? So we've got 20, maybe 30 years to get to net zero, if that. And that's still going to be rough. That's still, I mean, you just got to look at the crazy hurricanes and the crazy storms we've had over the last couple of years to know things ain't quite right. Oh yeah, and Mrs. Biffle Chips. Sorry, this is why I came up with this idea. You know all that raw sewage we're pumping into the sea and into rivers? Well, guess what it does, right? Guess what it does? It releases methane into the environment, and methane is like 25 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. And that methane is going to be produced by breaking down that sewage. Doesn't matter if we break down the sewage in a biodigester, in the sea, in the ground. You know, like the only way you could remotely stop that is to dehydrate it and burn it as a solid fuel, which is very inefficient. You know, the only possible way to stop methane being released is to burn it as a solid fuel, and you are still going to be releasing CO2, but it's not as bad as the methane that will be reduced. But if you can convert the solid waste to methane and good fertilizer, use the fertilizer on the fields, obviously, because fertilizer is a fertilizer. But more importantly, take that methane, use it for something, and then burn it. Well, it makes more sense, right? At least to me. Also, we need less cows in the world. Cows are really bad for the environment. Like, I don't think everyone should go vegetarian. I know I'm vegetarian. I'm not one of those crazy, everybody needs to stop eating meat. Try to eat less meat, people. You know? Vegetables taste great. Do the method where it can be caught exactly, right? If it's going to be produced anyway, would we not rather use it? It's like for hundreds of years, we took the sawdust from milling lumber and we literally buried it. We used it to soak up like vomit and stuff. And then at some point, somebody thought, if we take all this sawdust and we squish it through a tiny grate, we can turn it into pellets, which can be used as fuel. But funnily enough, there's a company that is developing a negative pressure burn system that can capture the methane from cows. I don't know if it will ever work out. I think it's pretty pie in the sky. I don't think it'll work out, but they're trying it. And there's companies that are researching how much methane is produced depending on the cow's diet so that they can better advise farmers on types of diets to give their cows to reduce methane output. That seems more helpful than the trying to capture cow farts to me personally. But the good thing about biodigesters is, you know, all that cow manure that we don't know what to do with and we dump in landfill. That's what we do with cow manure a lot in the UK. Guess what? Guess what? We can put that in the biodigesters as well as the human sewage. So all that methane that would be produced after the cow is done digesting, well, we can use that as well. Why not? Fuck it. Let's go. Yeah, the farm that my dad works on is a potato farm, funnily enough. I did say he brought potatoes to the school, so that makes sense. And they have cows there as well, and a few other things. But they make kettle chips, which are like extra thick potato crisp. There, and the fryers are heated by biogas from an on-site. They call them bellies, funnily enough, but the biodigesters. The entire deep fryer system for thousands and thousands of bags of potato chips a month is heated by methane captured from cow manure, which I think is incredible. And the thing that blows my mind is they don't even like advertise it on the packet. They're not even doing it. Basically, like most of where they sell to are like change deniers, so they don't put it on the packet. They just worked out that it's cheaper to do that than pay for gas from the gas grid because well, cow manure is free, right? So like they take the cow manure, which they would usually have to pay to dispose, and they put it in the biodigester. They collect the methane, use the methane, and that's cheaper than buying gas off the grid. And it just happens to be carbon neutral, which is even more helpful. The only downside to bellies, as they call them, or biodigesters, is they're quite large. Now you see, there was. Do you know what a gasometer is, Mrs. Bifflechips? Before I explain this to you, no, it doesn't measure gas. I'll DM this to you. One moment, please. So this is what in Britain we call a gasometer. I'm trying to find a picture of the type that we had. Alright, so this image, this image is the type that we have in the UK. So they work it by like sliding spirally. Um, and there was some of these in my town, and there was a big petition to turn them into biodigesters, and instead they ripped them down because they could sell the metal for scrap. In fact, that second picture is the one that was in my town. I just looked at the caption. That second picture, yeah. Anyway, um, they they worked out that it would be like it's already connected to the gas grid, and it's already an airtight vessel that is pressure regulated. So with minimal changes, they could turn it into a biodigester. The council, instead of worked out, instead of giving it to a business or charity to run as a biodigester, they could get short-term financial gains because, well, it's all cast iron and that's very expensive. And that's what they did with them. And I think that is a true travesty. One, because it's part of our industrial cultural heritage, and two, because well, who doesn't want free gas, you know? Sorry, I just gotta check my Spanish spelling on this. I can do. I put one extra letter. Yeah. Anyway, so that was a bit of a shame. But I'm a big proponent of biogas. Mostly because like the majority of our energy that isn't renewable is now gas. So like if we can even if we can replace 10% of that with biogas, the reduction in emissions is massive. And also, I don't want children swimming in raw sewage. Is that asking too much? That I want children to be able to swim in water and it not be raw sewage? It's almost like selling off our water treatment companies to private people was a bad idea. Nobody ever saw that. Oh, but don't worry. I'm not going to say the name of it because it would give off my location massively, but the local water board where I live posted record profits with a 125% increase in dividends. So I guess they're doing pretty well. Yeah, exactly, right? And even if, let's say for a minute, that Thames water wasn't pumping sewage directly into the Thames, and let's say that Thames Water, after meeting every environmental regulation and meeting every customer need that they had profit, why not invest that profit in the UK? You know, why not invest that profit in green energy? Why not invest that profit in green manufacturing? Why not invest that profit in, biodigesters so that they can make even more profit from methane? It's just silly. It's ridiculous. There are so many things that profit could be being used for, even if the water system worked perfectly, which it doesn't, then giving it, no offense to Ontario teachers' pensions. Like, I know you guys need pension money, but like, haven't you got your own water companies your government can sell, right? Yeah, there are certain things that just shouldn't be private companies. I agree. I completely agree. Like water companies, power companies, internet companies, I don't think should be private companies. Healthcare shouldn't be private companies. TV license in the UK is done by a private company. Like the BBC doesn't even do it. The BBC gets a fixed rate income from the company that are awarded the contract, and then that company takes TV licenses. And the idea is that if they take all the TV licenses, they make a profit, and if they fail to get them all, they would lose money. But they always somehow make massive profits. You know, weird how that works out. And it weird how it works out that the company that currently takes TV licensing in the UK is owned by a Tory donor, and Uh, they were appointed to be the company who takes in TV licenses by Boris Johnson's government. Weird how that works out. It must be a coincidence, right? I feel like this. I feel like this whole stream is just me complaining about the government at this point, and I don't even care anymore. I'm a one man politic podcast today, apparently. mean, there's a lot of the governments to complain about. I know, right? I don't feel right complaining about other countries' governments, but I can complain about my own, right? Alright, Mrs. Bagel Chips, I am going to leave the stream though. Because I want to shower and relax a little before I gotta go out. Thank you for hanging out. I've enjoyed complaining to you. You know, I've enjoyed talking about politics. But thank you so much for hanging out. Have a good day, night, morning, afternoon, or evening. Whoever you're watching this live video on YouTube, guys, look after yourself, stay safe. Last but not least.